Hello and welcome to the Art of Costume Podcast. I'm Elizabeth Joy Glass.
And I am a disgruntled Merlotte's employee who is always wondering why no one is ever coming to work and we're so understaffed. Spencer Williams.
Hello, Spencer. We would both be working at Merlotte's and be very disgruntled. We'd be like, I don't know what the hell is going on, but why are we the only people ever at work?
Why does no one ever show up to work? Sookie shows up to work once a season.
Yeah. I was like, we're stuck here with Arlene. Like,
hey, Elizabeth, happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.
Oh
How have
gosh.
you been?
I am good. I have been going crazy on spooky season stuff. I have been fiercely watching True Blood, which we're going to get into it.
Yes.
We had Lightbox Expo the other day, which I was excited to see some costume nerds there. And of course, I was at Vogue World the other day, which was... It's been a wild week.
A wild week. I just been like watching your Instagram being like, okay, what cool thing is Spencer doing now while I make my Halloween decorations?
Elizabeth will text me and be like, are you home this week? And I'll usually be like, not really.
Or I like won't see your cars for a couple days. I'll just be like, you're alive, right?
Yeah. Well, we are so excited to be wrapping up our hot vampire month. It has been a wild ride. We started with The Lost Boys, went into Interview with the Vampire, Only Lovers Left Alive. But I don't think anything's more insane than today's episode because Elizabeth finally got her wish and got me to watch True Blood.
Yes, the one, the only HBO classic with, in my opinion, the best intro sequence of any TV show ever. True Blood.
This was a ride. This was a wild ride. I mean, this is probably the first time I ever texted Elizabeth like kind of nonstop being like, hey, remember that one episode where Sookie's brother is like drank too much vampire blood and then his penis is so engorged that he has to go to the hospital with his sister's best friend who actually has a crush on him. Elizabeth's just like, yep.
Like, I remember that. You also texted me early on being like, I would have never guessed this would be something you were interested in watching.
Right. Of all people, I'm like, True Blood, right? You're not talking about like Vampire Diaries or something? She's like, no, this is the one.
True Blood. With Sookie Stackhouse and Eric.
I was going to say, then I saw Alexander Skarsgård and I was like, all right. No.
That's when you see him, you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
Well,
let's get into Elizabeth because we have a huge episode.
We do. We absolutely do. Give us a summary, Spencer.
All right. In the small town of Bon Temps, Louisiana, Sookie Stackhouse, a sweet, polite waitress with the small complication of being telepathic, is doing her best to live a quiet, drama-free life, even though literally everyone in this town is obsessed with her. That dream is devastated when Bill Compton, a vampire and a man of impeccable manners and questionable timing, strolls into the bar where she works. Suddenly, Sookie finds herself neck deep in a supernatural world, complete with fangs, vampire leather bars, fairies, shapeshifters, orgies, werewolves, witchcraft, Alexander Skarsgård, royal disputes, religious cults, drug dealing, sex demons, a manager who's occasionally a beagle, and more relationship chaos than a season of Flavor of Love. And that is True Blood.
Flavor of Love. I will never forget when you rewatch Flavor of Love when we were roommates. Oh my gosh. I've never heard such a good summary.
I mean, I just felt like there's more to fit in there, but I had to cut it off at some point.
I mean, manager who's occasionally a beagle and more relationship chaos than Flavor of Love, I think is pretty much hits all points.
I'll be honest, I didn't even make it to season 7, so I'm sure I'm missing some good stuff here. But let's meet our costume designers, Elizabeth.
Absolutely. We have friend of the pod, Danny Glicker, who designed the first 3 episodes of True Blood. And then we have Audrey Fisher, who you will know her work from The Man in the High Castle Season 1, Barry Seasons 1 and 2, I Know What You Did Last Summer from 2021, and Pulse.
Yeah. I love Audrey. I've interviewed her before. She did a show also called Love and Death. And also she was assistant costume designer on That 70s Show.
She was. And she also started out on True Blood before becoming the designer of the rest of the many seasons of True Blood. And Spencer, I kind of feel like there's so much in True Blood that our only choice was to go back to the source.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. There is absolutely no way we could do this episode without some help. So after this break, I am so excited that we're going to be joined by the one, the only costume designer, Audrey Fisher, to walk us through that laundry list of wild things that we've seen in Bon Temps, Louisiana. It's a great conversation. Elizabeth and I met with her earlier today. I'm so excited. She is the coolest, and I hope you all enjoy this episode. And after the interview, make sure you come back because we're going to then play our favorite games. And I also have a little special surprise for Elizabeth, too. So we're going to get into it. All right.
Hi, I'm Dan, who does all the magic behind the scenes. I wanted to say thank you, and if you want to support the show even farther, go to tpublic.com/user/theartofcostume, where you can buy a couple variations of our logo on t-shirts, mugs, and stickers. Also, be sure to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. And if you're an audio listener, leave us a 5-star review on Apple Podcast. Now, back to the show.
So exciting. Oh my God.
All right, costume nerds, I am so excited for this interview. Elizabeth and I have been talking about it for months now, and I can't believe it's actually happening. Please welcome our friend, costume designer, Audrey Fisher. Audrey, hey.
Hi, guys. Hello, Spencer and Elizabeth. I'm so thrilled to join you and talk about my beloved True Blood. Thank you for inviting me to chit chat about it. Love it.
We're so excited. I mean, this show, Elizabeth's seen it before plenty of times. This was my first time, and my life has been changed. It has been an absolute trip. So yeah. We have a lot of questions.
We do, especially because during its 7-season run, True Blood was just such a phenomenon. And it continues to have just a huge fan base that still loves it and continually goes back to it. The look of the show, the costumes play such a big role in its success. Going back to the beginning, you originally joined this series as assistant costume designer to our good friend Danny Glicker. What do you remember about those early days and stepping into Bon Temps, Louisiana?
I mean, the pilot, I just remember the excitement of, Danny telling me that he was going to do this pilot, with Alan Ball. They had done Towelhead together. And so he had this, really, really great relationship already. And so, yeah, basically he said, Alan wants to, make this Sookie Stackhouse kind of novel into a show. And there's, many volumes, and it's a very big story.
Yes.
And it's vampires in Louisiana. And I was like, wow, that sounds amazing. I had never done anything vampire yet. So I immediately started reading the books, and I just, they're like, I don't know if you've read the books, but they're really like popcorn, right? They're just fun. And it's so soapy and wonderful and great characters, and, Sookie Stackhouse, I mean, incredible. So I was very excited to sort of get into this world, and it's just the South and the Gothic elements and the romance. I mean, it all sounded very juicy and fun. And then the pilot was just like a crazy fever dream. It went so fast. It was so crazy. And figuring out, some of the blood stunts and, all of the interesting sort of rules about silver and things that weaken vampires. And, you know, it was early days, so we didn't have a lot of money, we didn't have a lot of time. And, Alan and his writing staff were figuring out all of those rules and sort of all the lore. So it was kind of fun to watch that start to unfold. Like, I don't know if you guys noticed, but in the pilot, a tiny silver chain completely like incapacitates. And then as the
Yes.
scenes go on, it has to be like more silver and more silver and more silver. But in the beginning, it was just a chain.
Yes.
So,
Oh,
things like
yes.
that, like watching, it was fun to have worked on all the seasons to see that sort of evolution. But yeah, I just remember the nights. I remember being at the Warner Brothers, over there, what's it called? The Jungle is where
Hmm.
it's, and, I drive by it every day now. My current job, I drive by and kind of wave to the jungle because I spent so many nights there. That's where Merlotte's was. And the building,
Oh, really?
yes, the building that's amazing production designer Suzuki turned into Merlotte's is still there. So it's
Whoa.
like, I drive by and see Merlotte's, but it's not Merlotte's anymore, which is sort of the beauty of Hollywood, all of those, like a palimpsest of all the different shows that have come and gone. That's where they did Gilligan's Island at
Right.
that
Uh-huh.
jungle, at that
I know exactly
location.
the spot you're talking about now.
Yeah.
I gotta get back
Yeah.
on that Warner Brothers tour.
Yeah. And I
Yeah.
totally driving by. And anyway, I always am like, it's just anyway. So yeah, I just remember how exciting it was. And then, the cast had such an incredible, um, the sort of energy of the cast was so strong. And of course, Bill and Sookie fell in love in reality. And they've been married ever since. And, like there was pregnancies and families were built, during the course of the show. So I mean, it's incredible, and I think they're also that their connection, because they kept it secret during the pilot and like into the first seasons, I mean, into the first episodes. And I feel like the energy of their early like romance really also created an incredible dynamic for the show
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
it was like truly they were falling deeply in love, for real.
Yeah, it built families, and I mean, it also was like a jumping point for your career as well,
Yeah,
too.
it really was. It was a springboard into the next phase, because I'd been at more of a theatrical. I'd been, working in theater and assisting in television. And my first gig right after working at the Taper downtown was that 70s show. And
Yeah.
Danny and I met after I wrapped that 70s show. And then soon after that is when he got True Blood. So, it was my first big moment into launching my career as a costume designer.
Wow.
That's incredible. And moving into when you started to be the costume designer,
Yeah.
Shirley Harris said she gave the option to Alan Ball because she loved his vision of the story. As you moved into that costume designer role, what was your collaboration like with Alan Ball, and how did his vision influence your process?
Right. Well, Danny, of course, laid such a strong foundation, for the characters, um, and that he developed with Alan. And I think the thing about Alan Ball that's so extraordinary is that he absolutely trusts his design team and department heads to sort of do their thing. So he gives you an incredible amount of freedom to explore and do your research and figure out sort of what you want to do and present to him all of your ideas. And then he's very collaborative and sort of loves to see it all. And I mean, you guys, this was back in the day where it was ripping things out of magazines and making color copies and and like cutting and pasting and getting big black poster board and like boarding it all up. And I remember the first time that we got that restickable glue and how amazing that was that you could like, because remember you used to glue things down and it was that, and then you'd rip it and destroy it if you tried to change your research around. I remember the restickable glue and how cool it was to be able to like just move things around instead of, anyway, so it was really kind of old school where I would take a big board, into his office at the beginning of each season and present sort of the different worlds that we were, exploring and we would just talk through all the research and talk about what felt right. And then I could dive in, I could sort of hone down and drill down on the sort of looks that he responded to and the vibes that he responded to. But what I remember most is that he was just so supportive and really trusted. And And then the approval process during shooting, because it gets very fast and furious, the approval process is always very kind of simple, which I also, that's now what I love and expect, but it's not at all what usually happens nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
It
Yeah.
was me and Alan where I would send, and that's how Danny did it too. And I inherited that as well. And Alan and I kept it going, but I would email him or walk over and show him an image. And if it was in email form, he would just write back love, and that was it. And then I got to forward that on to everyone else and be like, this is what he loves. Let's do this. And everyone's like, great. And luckily I've worked with a lot of, powerful kind of showrunners who have that kind of control. But I know that on a lot of other shows, there's kind of like a committee that you have to run all your images by. And that sounds terrible to me. And I know that a lot of us have to do it that way. But I always kind of cherish that memory of just getting the email back that just says love,
Yeah. It's short and sweet.
Sounds
Short and sweet.
amazing.
It's the opposite of like this phrase, I don't hate it. I hate that phrase.
Right.
Like, sometimes
Yeah.
like, I don't hate it. It's like, okay, I'd much rather hear love than I don't
Right.
hate it.
I don't
So anyway,
hate it. Yeah.
the relationship with Alan was just warm and amazing, and he was so respectful and kind, and he's so, he's a genius. So kind of just you just want to create for him because he's such a wonderful collaborator, and so yeah, just wants to make the best story and wants your help to do it, and that's a great feeling.
Yeah.
So you design even more powerfully, I think.
Mm-hmm. Well, Audrey, this was, like I said, this was my first time entering a True Blood universe, and Elizabeth got a lot of shocking texts from me as I was going through the first couple seasons. I was like, "What do you have me watching? This is crazy."
Yeah.
I love it because it just was like so unapologetically itself. It was not afraid to go for it. And I had to ask you about the blood and the gore. I mean, because to say that this was a bloody show would be a little bit of an understatement. So tell me about the challenges that were presented to you and your team looking at the amount of blood that we're covering. I mean, it's not like drops of blood. We're talking about, Nickelodeon style buckets of blood on some of these costumes.
Yep. And what's interesting in this like board is that you see here our use of white. It's kind of like white is a signal, right? Like you're about to see a lot of blood.
Put on your ponchos.
Yeah. And literally people on set would be wearing ponchos, like behind the scenes, by the way.
Really?
That happened. You would sometimes have to wear just a plastic bag, just a trash bag, cut out, and just because you can see. Yeah. I mean, so it's so wild to see these stills because yes, the blood was obviously a character, right? A huge part of the show. And what I learned and what my whole team learned very quickly was, multiples. Like that's one of my kind of biggest lessons is the how to procure enough multiples so that you can achieve, the vision of your director or your showrunner when you're shooting something that has, a cannon of blood, being shot out at your lead. So, it really, it's like frequently you have to build something, right? And then build like that dress on the lower right. So that early Sookie where I see Eric still has his wig on, right? So I think that was maybe episode 4 or 5 or 6 of the first season. And I was designing the show by then. And I remember that dress that she's wearing, that was actually kind of a very like kind of an inflection point for me in learning about sort of multiples because there was basically, I think for that scene, we wigged Anna because it was such an intense reset. We couldn't get the blood in her hair, and that was real. That was, I mean, fake blood, but that was obviously, you can see it's not, nothing is digital here. It was not put in post, right? So it really affects the whole set. It's a huge reset. It's a huge cleanup. It gets everywhere. It's messy. So she was being wigged for that scene, and there was only one wig, which kind of, and so that taught me that when you're having a stunt like this where you've got a lot of blood, you really pay attention to what's going on in the hair department. Because if they have one wig, that's one time basically,
Yeah.
right? Like
Yeah.
you have to be aware of that. And I think I was so kind of new and excited that I think I built 6 dresses
Wow.
because I
Oh, wow.
anticipated that we might do it that many times, and the wide and the close up and then having to go back in. And I remember it was sort of it was an inflection point because we didn't really have the time or the money to build 6 dresses. And so it was really stressful in the department. And then on the day we only did it, I think we did it twice. We did it because that's what we could do with the wig. And then one of them was a close up so that it could be the wig was already bloody. Anyway, so like taught me like about sort of that you have to pay attention to all departments and see what kind of resources everyone's bringing to the table for the actual shoot day. So nowadays, when I'm dealing with blood or any kind of other, stunt like this where the costume is going to get something on it, like there's something going on right now where I had to get prepared for multiples for something being thrown. Now my rule is 4, that you need 4.
Mm.
Right. And that's where I stop because there's no way they can do it more than that. And that like you can have 1 clean and 3 to blow and you're safe for, reshoots or whatever if you need a clean version. But
Right. And people got trusty too. They're like, she's from True Blood. She knows
well,
the game.
no, seriously, that is a thing. It's like people do know that I know blood and I know how to handle it and I know multiples. But now that, so back then, yes, it's like I think we had 5 of that white trench coat. And that was, I think, from, that was something we bought over the counter and altered over the counter. That's not like for medicine.
Yeah.
I knew what you meant though.
Anyway,
Yeah.
we bought that at like Bebe or, BB. I've never really known how people say it. I love saying it,
Me
BB.
neither. I just write it
Anyway,
down.
yeah, it's like RIP. But I think that's where we got that. I think also that was like maybe I can't remember, but that blouse in the top with the kind of the rose kind of that was also a purchase.
Yeah,
And
that's
that went
actually
in,
one of my favorite costumes
I
because
know.
you added so much texture to Lorena's costume before,
Yes,
she spoiler alert meets her end.
I
And I knew
know.
it was going to get covered in blood, but the way you added textures and like that rose, it let the blood kind of drip down an
Yes,
interesting texture. Oh,
I
that was good,
know. I
Audrey.
know. Thank you. Yeah, she loved that costume. I think she borrowed that for an event one night, like after one of the multiples, she wore it out or
Right.
something. I think that's in the archives, and as is the white dress in the archives. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, so it's like it was all about, and I mean, look at Russell Edgington up there. So amazing. We called
Yeah.
the sort of squishy bits of blood, the sort of like gooey bits, those were called nurnies on our set. And always you would like put the blood on and then you'd put on some nurnies as well, because that just made it look more gross and chunky.
Oh yeah.
All kinds of stuff like that. And
Amazing.
we had, I think there were 3 different bloods. There was one brand we used that had like the, wet, dry, and like fresh were the three. And so we, and we just had buckets of it. And it was in like sort of like, it was in squeeze bottles and it was, it was everywhere. We had a huge supply. I still have some of it, Um, but it was really, also remember, doing tests to find the right red for the camera because we shot on film. And, it's really like finding the right tone and the right color to represent fresh, dried, and all of that. It was a interesting project. Like it's really was, and now it's so different because now there's so much blood in post that sometimes you don't even need a
Mhm.
multiple, right? It's
No.
like
Wow.
that's
Boo.
wild. I did a movie called Kate for Netflix, and there was a lot of that was in 2019, and it was like a Yakuza, and there was lots of like, gunfight and sword play and slashing and stuff, but that was all in post, so I didn't
Oh.
do worry. Like, they would just say, "Oh yeah, we're going to do it in post." And that was always very uncomfortable for me because I was like, "What do
Right.
you mean? Like, it's not practical at all." And they were like, "Nope." I was like, Okay.
You're like, are you sure?
It
I have
seems
fanfuls of
crazy.
blood
Yeah.
ready to go.
Yeah, ready to go. And always for the blood, there was all, our team, our sort of special effects team would be there. And Dan Rebert is the genius special effects guy. And, he would be kitted out, just like any special effects guy you could imagine from like central casting, where he's got like a fishing vest with all kinds of stuff in it. And he's got a special hat on. And he's wearing like these, totally paint splattered and blood splattered pants and like hiking boots and, all his gear. And there's this huge bucket of blood with a hose in it. And he's just ready to like pump it, I mean,
Yeah.
just hysterical. I mean, the behind the scenes of these is just, I wish the camera could turn around and take a picture of all of us standing
I
there
can't
covered
even
in
imagine.
plastic, with like a bucket with like a plunger in it. It's, yeah.
And I'm sure you're all going home with blood on your, finding
On
it
your
days
shoes, on
later.
everything.
Yeah.
It would get
Yeah.
everywhere. Some people just had like the shoes they would wear on set because they would get like doctors, because they would get room.
Yeah.
Anyway.
That's incredible. What's also incredible is Sookie Stackhouse, played by Anna Paquin, our series mind reader, part Faye, who's always dressed correctly, no matter the occasion. What was your direction for Sookie, and how did it change over the seasons?
Yeah. Well, it's so fun to see all of these looks, boy. Yeah, I mean, the sort of direction was that she's just like perky and beautiful and has that Southern charm and that femininity, but she kind of like doesn't know how beautiful she is. But, like she's just
Yeah.
kind of like she's really not that vain or self-conscious, but she's just this kind of like perfect, beautiful, perky girl.
Literally everyone's obsessed with her in this town.
I mean, yes, yes. And I mean, we lots of jokes about the bras, like the boobology of like how we created, Sookie's
Yeah.
collage and sort of this like luscious, unbelievably biteable bosom.
Yes.
That
Yeah.
was
That's
always,
amazing.
yes, it was always a big effort to sort of make sure we were achieving that perfect kind of, boob. Um, and the bra, RIP, the bra that we used for so many years, it was a Felina that no longer is made. And when they stopped making it, it was like I was in a panic.
Oh
Yeah.
no.
It was the bra under the Merlot's tee, and Danny designed the Merlot's tee. It was an American Apparel, scoop neck, cotton. We must have tried on 5,000 t-shirts. But this one was the one. So we literally had like a stock of them, maybe 50, just lined up ready to go in her closet in the department. But yeah, it was always a challenge to find something that was feminine enough, that was like not too kind of, it had to still feel like real and sweet and not go over the top and into total camp.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And of course, she did sort of grow up during this, I mean, a lot of these dresses, these very sort of fun, summery, like the red and white floral, it's so extreme. And we did sort of like, as she grew up a little, I think we got a little bit away from that totally flirty sundress, like that beautiful lavender in the left corner.
Love
That
that
was for,
dress.
right, where she's in her, and he proposed, or he's planning on proposing, and then he does, right? And she runs out, and she doesn't answer.
Yeah. And then he
So I
gets
designed that
kidnapped.
based on sort of, yes, yeah, that's right, that's right. That was like sort of inspired by Elizabeth Taylor, sort of like a
Ooh.
much
Yeah.
more sophisticated. And I feel like that bodice you can see is a little less frothy, right? It's a little more kind of chic. And that color on her was so extraordinary. Anyway, we had the best time in all our fittings, but really, yeah, the brief was to make her just kind of like irresistible and sweet, an irresistible, sweet Southern girl who just is like everyone just wants to make out with her.
And we
Ah,
definitely know Bill Compton. He's right there right
oh my
away.
God, yeah. I mean,
As
Oh, he
as a
looks good. I haven't
700,
seen
he
some of these.
does. Oh yeah. How did your team draw inspiration from his history? Because he's a 170-year-old vampire turned during the American Civil
yeah,
War.
yeah.
How did all of this history get reflected in his costumes?
I remember in the beginning, it was really about, he's a real gentleman. He's a Southern gentleman, and he was like like the gentry, like a landowner, and sort of, I think that the gentlemanly quality is what we tried to kind of carry along in contemporary Bill, living in the now. So that, and I think that the Henley is a huge part of his wardrobe, right? And that
Yeah.
felt like sort of harken back to like a uniform piece, something that was a very typical piece of, sort of an American male living in the South in the 1800s, also it's sort of evocative of a uniform, of the Civil War uniform. So I feel like he had a sort of uniform quality in the way he dressed that was very gentlemanly, dark colors, but like light, light Henleys, lighter Henleys. But also he's very iconic. Like his fashion was very kind of, handsome gentleman and not like trendy, right? We always kept
Hmm.
it like a dark wash denim and, everything felt there's a lot of like double RL and, sort of these iconic kind of lines and silhouettes and styles. As opposed to Eric, right, who was much more kind of yeah, so much more like about sex and about something being tight and revealing and, much more kind of like he was much more fashionable in his choices, he was interested in the
Oh,
current
yeah.
trends.
Yeah.
And always the necklace and the sort of, the chest, revealing the chest a bit, a tighter t-shirt. Yeah, we had so much fun with him. And I remember that first fitting, where he's got the wig there trying on different looks. And you can definitely see how that first fitting, well, first of all, Alex is a giant, right?
Yeah.
He's the most beautiful, handsome, tall person you've ever met, right?
Yeah, I mean, he's
His
really the
shoulders,
reason why we call this month Hot Vampire Month. Like,
Yeah.
it is Eric Northman.
exactly. His shoulders are like, 4 feet wide, and his waist is like, this. And so he's like a swimmer, right? He's like a triangle. And so everything always had to be deeply, deeply altered and tapered to the waist. But we had to accommodate those beautiful shoulders. And that first fitting, we were trying to find his look. And I feel like, we found this sort of little, you can see the little peak lapel. I think it was kind of like a waxed cotton. I don't even think it was leather, sort of sport coat, but it wasn't right. Like a jacket, it wasn't right. That look wasn't right. And the collared shirt, right? It wasn't right. And the sort of the belt buckle, it had a sort of like a snake eating itself. I'm trying to remember where I got it. But anyway, all of those things kind of felt too medieval or like kind of too old fashioned. And we immediately, like the minute that his hair was cut, which was also sort of like the lore was broken a little bit because vampires' hair is not supposed to grow. I think that's right. And
Yeah.
Yeah,
so,
that sounds right.
yeah. And so the wig, it's sort of the wig didn't, as his character developed, the wig didn't make sense. So there was that moment where Pam like cuts his hair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
And
yeah,
gets blood in it.
yeah, exactly. So, it's like because the wig wasn't Eric enough, right? So we sort of, Alan and everyone decided to go to that next look, this sort of iconic look that now everyone knows, Hot Vampire.
Yeah.
And then I got to go into some more kind of like sexy goth rocker kind of, vibes for him. And he had so much fun with it.
Yeah, and he has this cool, was it Fantasia? Is that what the club's
Yeah,
called
Fantasia,
too?
yeah.
This is
Yeah,
like hot
yeah,
vampire, leathery, like it
yeah,
just all works
yeah,
together in unison the whole time. I would
yeah.
go here, honestly.
I mean,
Yeah.
Except for the torture chamber, but like,
yeah, right, not that. And the company
Well, maybe
name,
actually. What am I
who
saying?
knows? Depends on the movie. The company name, the sort of LLC for True Blood the whole time was Fang Banger Productions.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was on our checks, and that was like always it's so
Yeah.
funny.
Well,
Probably
getting ready for
not appropriate anymore, but anyway.
Yeah. Well, getting ready for True Blood, a lot of people were telling me that the character I'm really going to love in terms of their costumes is going to be Lafayette. And once I saw this character, I totally understood what people were saying.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about working with the great Nelson Ellis, who really just brought so much life to this character? And as Elizabeth told me, a character that really isn't in the books as much as one would think. But this character just became so integral to the heart of True Blood, it just kept going.
Exactly. Well, first of all, so tragic that he's gone. That's always I just can't believe that such a great light is gone and such a talent is gone. And I feel so lucky that I got to work with him and help create this character with him. I mean, honestly, a lot of True Blood. You can imagine how many True Blood fitting photos and, all the research that I've had on my phone all these years. And I finally it was taking up so much space. I had to move it off, right? So I took my True Blood sort of everything and put it onto a hard drive, but I couldn't move Nelson. So I still have all my Nelson fitting photos in my phone, which means that occasionally one pops up, like on
Yeah.
this day in
Mm-hmm.
2009, and there's Nelson as in this like unbelievable outfit. And it always just makes my heart skip a beat because I feel so privileged to have kind of been in the room with him during fittings because it was really like this crazy chemistry that happened in that room, and he was just so into it and like had the most fun with it, and he loved the costumes, he loved this character. I mean, a lot of things were inspired by him, like the head wraps. That was from I think his aunt Peaches.
Mm.
Like a lot of things were sort of referencing his own history growing up in the South and his family and sort of struggles that he'd been through, struggles that his family, things that had happened within his own family. So yeah, I mean, it's all him, right? He just also you could put these outfits on another actor and they could never make it feel and work, right?
Right.
Like
No.
this.
Yeah, I mean,
So
Nelson really became
yeah.
Lafayette. Like it
Yeah.
just with the costume, the script, and all that. Like it just all came together in like a
Yeah.
really Kinsit motion.
Yes. And he delighted in it, like he loved all of the things that I would have for him to try. And anyway, so yeah, so I think that look on the left, right? That's from the pilot. So Danny had this great dialogue that he started with Nelson, and we got that belt made in downtown LA. I think that, of course, that's so different now. Santee Alley is so different now, but there was a vendor on Santee Alley who would make those like name belts. So we did that. And I mean, come on, that belt buckle, come on.
Yes.
And I mean, the head wrap, the do-rag, that was also like something that they worked out together when he was working. That sort of felt right. And then it became, it translated into his fashion, everyday fashion. So many do-rags. And I made so many do-rags out of so many fun, different kinds of, fabric and stretch fabric. But yeah, and then I remember the utilikilt, right? He was wearing a utilikilt. Danny did a utilikilt on him in the beginning, and then I sort of riffed off that. And I think everything, from the right of the screen, is our pieces, or outfits that Nelson and I sort of created together. And yeah, I just went crazy. I just couldn't. The more the better, And he had certain favorite pieces that we would use a lot, and yeah, I can't say enough about how much a delight he was to work with. And just on set too, he was kind of, I feel like he was the one actor where um he he would often go off book and just improvise, and no one ever stopped him,
Right.
right?
Because it
Like
was
Yeah.
good, no matter
That was
what it
great.
was.
Yeah.
yeah, like whatever he brought, we were all like, yep, that's right. Like it just worked. And Alan knew it and everyone knew it. And we sort of, let him go. And he just, yeah. Yeah, the way he made this character come to life was astonishing. And yes, the character is killed off in the end of the first book.
Hmm.
But Nelson was so magnetic and fascinating and amazing that they were like, nope, we cannot kill this character.
Mm-mm.
This
No
character has
way.
to survive. We need
Yeah.
him.
It was the right choice too.
Yes.
He brought so much to the show. Some other characters who aren't in the books as much as you would think. We have the Newlands and the Fellowship of the Sun. What were your inspirations for these two? Because these are some of the episodes where I'm like, this is wacky, but I love it.
Yeah, these are some of the creepiest characters, actually.
Yeah.
Totally.
Yeah.
So much to say about these two. Okay, so the inspiration was absolutely Joel Osteen,
Yeah.
a preacher in Houston, and
Yes.
his wife. So it was absolutely them, and all kind of those televangelistic sort of couples. Just completely over the top, right? The sort of this hyper feminine, kind of, well, now we can say Trumpian, right? The Trump
Mhm.
kind of look.
Yeah.
And then this man, this very kind of masculine man, but there's kind of a weird edge to him that's a little bit feminine, and it's a little confusing, and he's like kind of like a sociopath, right?
Yeah.
Even though, right, they're sort of leaning into this crazy religious kind of world. So we just riffed on all of that kind of culty televangelist stuff. And had so much fun with it because, of course, these two actors are so incredible. Like they will go anywhere and do anything and just have the best time with it. Like I will text Michael occasionally. Like I have also photos of Michael that come up, and I will just text him a picture with like no words. And we just, because like he loved that outfit so much. The Light of Day Institute with the dress shirt. Like we decided in the moment, we were like, oh my God, we've got to just put this on over this dress shirt.
It's so wild.
Right. And then he was like, yes. And then we just did it and we had the best time. And I have that, so that apron right there, I've got one of the aprons that we made where we spelled something wrong when we hot pressed the letters. It's in my kitchen right now.
That's amazing.
I know.
I love
It's
it.
so incredible. Right. And crazy. They just obviously they just went crazy with it and just didn't. Right. They pushed it to the limit, these performances, and it worked because these characters were so over the top.
Yeah. They're great.
Yeah. And the pleated pants, Michael in those pleated pants, it's too much.
Well, I love them. They really were like, to me, some of the scariest villains in the series. Something about them just felt a little too on the nose recently, if you know what I'm saying. So, but I heard a rumor that there's gonna be werewolves in this series, and I was waiting for it, and we got exactly what I was looking for. We have plenty of werewolves in this series.
Yeah.
We have Alcide Hervo, who, I'm loving the very rugged kind of, outdoorsy werewolf. You didn't go typical, like everyone's wearing like fur collars and stuff.
Right.
So kind of dressed like dogs. There's a lot of like flannels and kind of cutoffs, which I just think is so lovely. Can you tell us about working with the werewolves?
Yeah. We just went kind of like, biker rocker on them, right?
Yeah.
Actually, we were really inspired. So one of my colleagues, Sarah Walbridge, she's a costume supervisor now, but she started on set with us and we've known each other since, 2008. And she's actually working with me right now. Like she's the best.
Nice.
We've done a lot of projects together with her now supervising for me. And her family in Ohio, basically, we just call this look Wolfpack. And her family in Ohio has a sort of like biker vibe. And so early on, when we were trying to figure out the Wolfpack vibe, she showed me a bunch of pictures of some of her family gatherings. And, they were like roasting a pig on a spit. And like her uncles, all had hogs and, and they're wearing, sort of, all kinds of motorcycle gear. And anyway, it was just, that was it, Wolfpack. So this is like and even now when we have to do a sort of like Southern kind of working class, motorcycle riding person, I just say, yeah, Wolfpack. And she's like, Wolfpack.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So Wolfpack is now our kind of code word for the werewolf look. And we just kind of, we leaned into that. We leaned into that sort of, Americana, iconic kind of, working class look and just had fun with it. I did put a few fur collars on there. His mom, Elsie's mom had a fur collar on like a Guess leather jacket that felt really right. So we went for it. But yeah, I know we tried not to like make it completely.
I meant like more like they weren't like dressed like dogs all the time. Like it was a little bit more subtle than that.
Yes, yes. But we did a lot of like Western wear, a lot of snap front, But yeah, it was fun. It was really fun to have that, as an element like that. It's so fun to create all the different worlds and getting to create this wolf pack look was fun up against Merlots and to try to figure out how to keep the Merlots people sort of in their own look. That wasn't, and that they didn't overlap too much. Like that was one of the greatest things about True Blood was all the worlds that we got to create, like, and the fairies and these guys. Yes.
It's
the
funny
royalty.
they say that too, because like there was a couple of times where I was watching it with someone else, like, wait, that person's a werewolf, right? But you could just tell like by looking at the costume, like you said, that wolf pack kind of nature. I'm like, I'm pretty sure they're the werewolves, just wait, they're about to turn into a wolf any second now.
Exactly.
So,
yes.
there's so many different characters in this show. You really had to like keep your head straight on like
Yeah.
Merlot's people look like this, royalty, which we're about to get into, and the wolves.
Yes.
But let's talk about the royalty because this is who I've been excited to talk about because I'm
Yes.
a big Evan Rachel Wood fan.
Oh, yeah.
And I was just waiting. You know, I watched season 1, season 2, and I'm like, where is she?
Yeah.
We really get some good Evan Rachel Wood moments in season 3. And of
Right.
course, Russell Eddington played by Dennis O'Hare. So you have these royal vampire courts, so to
Yeah.
say, in in the Midwest
Yes.
America. How
Yes.
do you bring that sense of royalty to, you know, what was then a contemporary time?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it was just, thinking about how old they were and what they were used to, and sort of like this historical reference point that they were both used to a much more, I mean, how old was Sophie Ann? I think anyway, they come from a different time, when they were sort of they were incredibly, as they became, right, when they became vampires, and then the worlds they lived in, they were sort of, yeah, lords and ladies, and were used to all this like extreme wealth and extreme um uh just access, and it just, but from another time, like just this sort of old school kind of royal vibe. So we tried to, just kind of show that through these completely over the top clothes, and sort of like a much more old fashioned kind of like, this riding jacket, which looks like, that's a typical style. The riding jacket, like it's been, for the last 100 years, sort of the same shape and silhouette. And sort of, I felt like for Sophie Anne, I also wanted to do a very classic line, sort of old Hollywood glam that also
Yeah.
felt
Yeah.
like so lush and sort of dripping with pearls. And right, she's like a queen. She doesn't
Yeah.
even know, she's just got all these diamonds on her ears because that's what that she's a queen.
Yeah.
So it was just trying to inject a sense of royalty into contemporary clothing. And they're in, contemporary situations where, you know, she's sitting by a pool, but I had to make it seem completely over the top. So we did that amazing, right? Put the brooch on the bathing suit and added that sort of flamboyant sheer sort of, gown over the top, the sort of dressing gown over the top. And the glasses, it just did everything to kind of make it seem like 30s Hollywood, but then also like, a, a sort of sovereign from hundreds of years ago.
It's actually one of my favorite costumes is when she's on the ground scratching out a lotto tickets, which is
Yes.
with all these jewels just hanging off of her. Even
Yeah.
if she's scratching lottery tickets, I
Right.
was like, this was one of, I was going to tell Elizabeth later, I'm like, that was probably one of my favorites. It's a good one.
It's a good one. And the dichotomy is so fun, right? Like the sort of that she's on the ground with a lotto ticket, but she's in this kind of cream,
Yes.
right? Elegant, crazy, jewel bedecked outfit. I love those. I love those counterpoints that Alan would create.
We also get a lot of those counterpoints with the fairies.
Ugh,
Ooh.
What a fun group of
yeah.
characters, so unique to everyone else in the series. What did you want to convey with their costumes, and what did you end up drawing on for inspiration?
Yeah. So the fairies, it was such a sort of like over the top, like when that first script that the fairies kind of made their appearance. I think it was at their club, which was called Hot Wings, if anyone wants to know. Um, but yeah, the fairies, I think if I remember right, we sort of the way that and that was Alex Wu, one of our writers who's now, he's show running and writing The Three Body Problem. He's a huge
Mm-hmm.
star in the world of, showrunners and creators. But I just remember this just now while we're talking, that part of the idea for these kind of like eclectic sort of fun costumes that have so much layering and color is that the fairies would sort of take little mementos from the people that they interacted with and the people who fell in love with them. And, because they're, always kind of mesmerizing everyone around them.
Yeah.
And so that was kind of part of it, that they sort of were like plucking all these different things from all the different humans that they had loved, but like maybe left behind. So that enabled me to sort of go crazy and sort of have this fun. It feels like it was sort of also kind of 90s fashion, kind of like all the different elements and layering up and all the color. and fun corsets and just tons of great jewelry. And yeah, it was like a circus. There was definitely a circus vibe as well. Just kind of people who are not in, these kind of creatures who are not really of our world and sort of just dipping in and out when they want to and sort of taking their favorite things. So that was kind of what inspired us. And then of course that sort of ethereal, sort of classic, like Alma Tadema sort of fairy vibe of, these sort of sylph-like, this little bit of dancer, kind of the tulle, sort of the encrusted bodice, but it's still very like loose. And I think those dresses actually came from a Dutch designer. I remember it was like an international purchase and it was all very, scary, the delivery, and it was all very tight and getting them multiple, and they're all custom handmade with this like silk
Oh,
tulle, and they were
wow.
hand beaded, and we weren't able to, with the time frame and the amount of labor that it would take to create these dresses, it just made more sense ultimately to work with this designer. And so that's what those two are wearing. This, I can't remember the brand. I don't even know if they exist anymore, but the label, but they were gorgeous. They
Yeah.
Oh,
felt
yeah.
very like balletic, but also very modern and very like sexy and pretty. And then when you see the fairies, excuse me, when you see the fairies in their sort of dark reality, those costumes, those were really fun to make because
Yeah.
we used a lot of at Western Costume, they have a whole water world aisle.
Ooh.
Stop.
Yeah.
That's
I
amazing.
know. And that aisle is unbelievable. And those costumes are extraordinary. I am blanking on the designer right now. I know Chrissy Carvanitas was, I think, the ACD, but the costume designer of Waterworld, he spent years making these extraordinary costumes, and it's so much money went into them, and they are exquisite. And so I rented a lot of those and would build up around those pieces because they just have this apocalyptic gorgeousness to them. And they're so layered and so beautifully made. And there's so much like aging and dying on every piece. It's incredible. Like
Yeah.
I encourage you, if you ever are in Western costume, to go to the Waterworld aisle and just be astonished.
And that costume designer was John Bloomfield, who we've talked
Bloomfield.
about, who did The Mummy also, Elizabeth.
Yes,
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
that's right. What a genie, clearly.
Audrey, we could talk to you about True Blood forever. I actually would like
Literally.
to, but we do have to let you go at some point. But we announced to our listeners a month in advance that we were going to be talking about True Blood, and the amount of people that reached out. I mean, we talked about Interview with the Vampire, Only Lovers Left Alive. Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on our other one. Oh, The Lost Boys, and now True Blood. And the amount of people that reached out that were like, "Thank God you guys are finally talking about True Blood." I mean, I was inundated with messages.
That's
People
great.
love True Blood all these
Yeah.
years later. So,
Yeah.
just as our final question, just looking back, I mean, what has True Blood meant to you and just your career personally, professionally, just looking back on the amount of people that still love the show and go back to it as a comfort watch, I think might be
Yeah.
more than any of us actually really know. There's a lot of
Right.
people that love True Blood.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I look back at it and I feel like so privileged to have been a part of it, honestly. Also, it was really like that golden age of television,
Mm.
when we would all have parties and watch the show on Sunday nights and people talking about it the next day and anticipating it. There was, it feels sort of, I mean, I know there are some shows that still are only, you can only watch them on Sunday night, and that now feels kind of so old fashioned, right?
Yeah.
But
Hmm.
remember back then, that was just how it was. And
Yeah.
we all waited with bated breath, and it was totally great. And it created this whole kind of structure where you had to wait, and the season lasted for 2 months, right? And it was so exciting and fun. So I'm also really happy that I got to be a part of that sort of must-see television when HBO was really kind of cresting. Um, and um, and yeah, I mean, the show, yeah, really was the start of my career as a designer. And I feel like it was an incredible training ground. And I got to meet the most exciting actors, and I got to sort of build up this costume family that's still with me. So it's like, I can't ever kind of thank Danny enough for bringing me along on that journey and then leaving, kind of handing it off to me so that I could have this incredible arc. Um, yeah, it means the world to me. And I still truly, it's like my True Blood family is part of my everyday life. Every day I talk to people who either are working with me right now, who know, we built up our way of working together on that show. We built up our base of knowledge on how to deal with blood and stunts and this and that. Like, we rely on the knowledge that we built up still today, just yesterday. Sarah and I were working out the multiples for this thing that we have to do on the current show. So yeah, it's a lovely like through line in my life. And
Yeah.
yeah, I loved every second of it.
And for all the, True Blood fans that are out there listening, do you have any last words for them for watching and coming back and rewatching the show every single day?
I mean, I have to say that True Blood fans are the best. I mean, they are the most like sweet, loving, group of people. I mean, I still get emails from True Blood fans about things that they want to find, or like, where can I get this? And I always write back and try to help work it out. Like, I still get fan letters, like fan emails, right? So I just think that, and also there's something so, I don't know. Yeah, it's something so, what's the word? Again, it's like kind of old fashioned the way we all feel about it, and the kind of the watching it when we watched it, and sort of the experience of going through all those seasons together. I feel like yeah, there's like an analog quality about it that I really cherish as well. Like it's, back in the day, kind of the true blood of it all. So yeah, Trubies forever.
Yeah.
Yes.
Forever. Well,
Forever.
costume designer Audrey Fisher, this has been such a joy. I mean, I've been looking forward to this interview, and it was so much fun.
Thank you.
I feel like we could talk to you all day.
I literally could sit here and look at pictures and talk about it all. I love it so much, and I'm so grateful.
Don't tempt us.
Do it again.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll bring Danny next time, and
Seriously.
that'd be fun.
Yes. Well, I really appreciate you reaching out to me and asking me to come on and talk about it. It's always like, I love talking about True Blood. It's just great to kind of, take a walk down memory lane, and to know that people are still loving it so much is just it just makes my heart sing. So thank you so much.
And
Of
thank
course.
you. And with that, we're going to take a little break. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Spencer, I could have talked to Audrey forever
Yeah,
and ever about True Blood.
same. She is, well, first of all, Audrey's hilarious. And also,
Yes.
sometimes we talk to designers, and we are kind of like, I hope they remember this because it was such a long time
Yeah.
ago. Audrey acted like she worked on this show like 2 weeks ago.
Literally. I was like, I can't remember what I did 3 hours ago this well.
She knew brands. She knew. I mean, she just remembered everything. I was
Yeah.
like, all right. So, yeah, it was such a pleasure talking with Audrey. I think she's, one of the best. And
Yes.
I love True Blood just because I love how passionate like people are about it, and you could just tell it really meant a lot to her and her crew. So I really had such a good time talking with her. And after the conversation, I was so inspired. So I actually was like, I just want to keep diving into True Blood and learning more about the people who made it. So Elizabeth, for your surprise and a surprise to everyone else, I actually reached out to friend of the pod, Danny Glicker, and I asked him if he would be also willing to like reflect a little bit on True Blood ever so briefly. So Danny emailed in, and this is Danny's letter to the podcast.
Amazing.
Hi, Spencer and Elizabeth. I want to share how much I love designing the initial looks of the costumes and characters for True Blood. So here are some random memories. First, it was such a costume designer's dream to delve into a world that was constantly in tension between the truth and artifice. The short version is in the world of True Blood. It was rarely to people who look like what we think of vampires, who are actually vampires, and I loved playing with that, toying with cliches, and then subverting them. And I love placing trinkets of information into the costumes that would be important in seasons down the line. One of my favorite details was I show how Sookie was always attracted to sparkly things, such as rhinestones on her cheap sunglasses, as a nod to the fact that she didn't yet understand that she was part fairy, something that would be revealed later down the line. And finally, I love working with Audrey Fisher. first as dear friend and a wonderful assistant costume designer, and then having a great pride to being able to pass a baton of a project that I loved to her because I knew that she would imbue it with all of her passion and insights, and the world of True Blood would remain in the hands and heart of a costume designer who would give all the characters of True Blood the lives and souls they deserved, even if some of them may have long since lost both their lives and souls. And that is from Danny Glicker.
That is incredible.
Yeah, it was so lovely. You could just really tell that there's such like a genuine connection, friendship, relationship between the two of them, which is why it feels so harmonious, that transition from costume designer to costume designer. And Audrey was really able to grab that baton and create some incredible costumes and evolve it through, 7 seasons.
Absolutely. Oh, I love what he said about adding like little clues to what would happen later on.
Yeah.
Because this time around, because I told you this, but this was my first time watching the series since I'd also read the books. Mm-hmm. And in the first episode, you see Jason with that trucker hat and the panther on it. And it's like alluding to like, hey, he's gonna get into some trouble with some panthers. Yeah. Better watch out.
Yeah, he's gonna get into some mess. So what would you give what would be your Stitch rating for True Blood? It's kind of like an impossible question for me, but
this is so hard, especially because I was definitely a little bit more critical of it this time after having read the books. But after like season 2, I was like, if you have not watched the show or read the books, 2 completely different things. Mm-hmm. Just so people out there know. So I kind of like, after season 2, I've kind of like, let's just sit back and enjoy this like you did the first time. And honestly, I think I gotta give it a 5 out of 5 stitches.
Yeah, that's fair.
This show knows what it is and gives that to you in every episode.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. Like I said to Audrey, it's very unapologetically itself. True Blood is authentically True Blood. I'm going to give it like a 4. I mean, True Blood is perfect for what it is,
Absolutely.
Like, obviously, like, the script is batshit crazy.
Oh, yeah.
Like, sometimes it doesn't make sense. I think season 2, like, the entire plot of, like, this sex demon orgy thing maybe went on a little long. but you can't help but just keep going. And next thing you know, you're 7 seasons deep. So I think a 4 feels fair. So, yeah, I love it.
I understand that.
Yeah. Are you ready to play our favorite game, though?
Yeah, I think so. You go first.
All right.
The one costume to rule them all.
So this was hard. There's quite a few costumes in this show.
Endless costumes.
Endless costumes. Like, I feel like Sookie wears some good ones, especially like in the beginning where it's like very hot pink, very girly. I also feel like Evan Rachel Wood's character wears some great costumes. But then I'm like, which one to me just says everything about True Blood? I don't know. When I think of True Blood, I think of this iconic image. And so then I fell on Eric Northman and just him walking around in his simple tracksuit.
Yes.
I don't know. To me, that's just like the iconic True Blood image to me. Like, you see this tracksuit and you just know Alexander Skarsgård fits so snugly right into that thing. So I'm just going to stick with that one for the sake of not having to go through the Rolodex of 1 million costumes from this show.
That is so fair. And this was like definitely a hard one for me because there's so many incredible characters, and I was like, okay, let's like narrow it down. I narrowed it down to like Lafayette and Eric. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, okay, but like, like when I'm thinking of True Blood, like what's one of the first things I think of? And it is Lafayette in his yellow shirt with that bejeweled Lafayette belt.
Yeah.
In like the first episodes with his fan, and I was like, that is just like so iconically True Blood.
Yeah, that's fair. That is so fair. Yeah, I mean, and I love that Audrey said that they got that belt originally made. I think it was actually with Danny's side of it. They got it made in Santee Alley. I'm like,
that's wild.
I love that. I want to get one. And that brings us to the end of our Hot Vampire Month and Spooky season. I can't really believe it. But we still have lots of great episodes coming up for the rest of this season. Especially our next one, Elizabeth. Winter is coming. What is our next episode going to be?
Winter is coming. Our next episode is a show that helped bring this podcast together.
Yeah, honestly.
Honestly. Probably the first thing me and Spencer bonded over.
Mm-hmm.
Another HBO classic.
True.
Game of Thrones.
Yeah. I'm so excited. I love Game of
Me
Thrones.
too.
And this is one that we have all the behind the costume facts ready to go already.
Yeah.
So.
There's a whole book.
Yeah. We have a Game of Thrones costume Bible to refer to. So I'm excited. I love Game of Thrones. To me, it's still one of the greatest shows of all time. Even with the last season, I don't care. I'm a last season apologist. I
You
just
are.
think this show is perfect. I'm so excited to talk about it. We used to do Game of Thrones watch parties together
We
all the
would.
time. So this episode has been a long time coming. So if you're excited for Game of Thrones, or if you want to tell us who your favorite hot vampire was, don't forget to email us at theartofcostume@gmail.com, or you could always message us on Instagram or TikTok at theartofcostumepod or at theartofcostume. Leave us a 5-star text review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify if you just loved Vampire Month. Would just reward us with your vampire love.
Let everybody know.
Yeah, let everybody know. Or maybe we missed some and need to demand more hot vampires. Do so in the 5-star text reviews.
Let us know.
And also don't forget to subscribe on YouTube so you can see all these hot vampires on screen. What's better than that, than having Alexander Skarsgård look upon you as you lay in bed with your bag of sour bats and, Halloween candy. There you go.
Perfect. Perfect.
Solid landing.
Everybody, have a spooky Halloween.
Happy Halloween. Be safe. Don't drink and drive.
Be safe.
But
That's what
do
Uber's
eat.
For.
Yes, but do eat lots of candy.
Do eat lots of candy.
And make out with lots of hot vampires.
That's my plan.
Happy Halloween.
Happy Halloween.